Howdy y'all, today we're going to put together the high pressure fuel pump. On the bench here, this coating that we put in the fuel tank has very much sealed up and worked very well. Let me see if I can get a shot inside of there for you. It has pretty much coated everything inside of there with a silver epoxy seal, and some of it's on the outside here, and it's very strong, and it did very well. I think this is going to keep our fuel nice and clean. Dad's going to put his fancy brass cap on here, and we'll seal it up, put this in the paint pile. Punching out the rivets, the drive rivets in here on the plate on the side of the fuel pump so that Dad can take that plate home and maybe polish it up. Just a big punch to start them and then a small punch to punch them out. We might even be able to reuse them.
I think we probably can. Oh yeah, I can clean this up nice now.
Well, we can paint underneath of it too.
Right.
That'll be good. We definitely want to keep this tag in good shape because the number on it is going to match the one that's stamped in the side of the fuel pump. If you hear any background noise in here today, that wind is really howling outside. Dad, your happy chair awaits you. Dad's trying to, with a pick, take out that O-ring that's in the top right there. Now I made some new ones out of cork. See how they're going to compare, and they might work. Problem is the small ones I made, they will stretch. I mean, you can make them work, and I only have certain ones that are the correct dimensions. I just don't see the necessity for these, so I think we're going to put the old ones back in here and just leave it alone. Right here, we have a 3H1690. This is the gauge that we're going to need later. I do have the correct settings right here. And thanks again, Wayne. We really appreciate it. Right here, I have a 4B7618 wrench, and this is to adjust these nuts on here, up and down, and to hold them while they're being adjusted, I have this wrench here. And this is a 9M4567. So I've got an old one and a new one. And I don't have the new one of these because it's actually a pipe that fits over this one to adjust these. But we'll make it work. We tend to like this Super Lube engine assembly grease. It stays put because we're not firing this up right away. And this stuff's a little lighter. It tends to seep off of the parts. So Dad's getting all these ready. So
I am using it on these rollers.
Yes, on the rollers they need it.
Just to get it worked in.
So it can get inside next to that pin and get it worked in there. But it's also really messy.
I might be getting carried away, but I don't think it'll hurt.
Well, not in this case. Scoring in there will hurt. A little grease I don't think will. They run in oil.
So here's the front of the pump. This is cylinder number 1, lifter number 1. We're going to put in, I've got all these pre-lubed really well with grease and whatnot.
And this is the bottom of the pump, so we're going in from the bottom here.
See the flat right here?
Yep,
on each side, and then this one is right there.
Yep.
That keeps them from turning. So here's number 2, here is number 3, now number 4.
Okay, so now we need to roll this thing over on its side so we can get some bolts in there to cage them against the spring, and then we can install our cam. We're going to use the same 4 SAE thread bolts and washers that we used to cage them to pull it out. You got to put a little bit of tension on them from the bottom to get them started. Barely have enough threads.
Okay, all of those are retained. They're all pulled up. Now we can install our camshaft with our rear bearing.
And it has to come in from this side over here. Next goes our gasket, and you got to watch because there's a oil porthole down here. Now this gasket can only go one way, so you can't really mess it up. But you do want to make sure that that's clear and clean. And then your outer bearing for the cam. Dad's going to put the plate in the back of the cam, and that uses a fold over lock. We put a little bit of Loctite on those bolts. I'm just using a 9/16 inch wrench to go in there to hold it. The other side of the cam, and I'll got a screwdriver through the other end so I can hold against Dad. You want these reasonably equal on a D4 so that the service meter will engage right there. And that is all that turns the service meter, is that little machine piece that fits inside of these two heads on these bolts. We're going to bend over the fold over lock. We just put a few washers and a nut on here to hold this cam from moving in and out. Now we can uncage the tappets and they'll rest onto the cam.
They're all working. There we go.
We're going to put the cover on here to cover this up, and the one over here on the other side, just to keep dirt and everything off of this newly lubed cam. The gasket for down here is going to be a 2A5176, and the one for the side is a 2A3399. We've been debating back and forth whether to pull this plug out of here and put a new O-ring in there, but I think we're going to go ahead and do it. I've got an H puller I'm going to rig up to get it pulled. Dad says we ought to give the slide hammer a try, and I think my three favorite tools, that's one of them. Here we go. Yep. Dad was right. Slide hammer yanked it right out of there, and we actually used an old stud out of a 7J to adapt it to my puller that's been adapted to this. New O-ring that goes in there is a 2A3854. We're gonna do that later. We're gonna start with number 1. That's kind of the hard one to get to. There's the trough. And the adjuster. I suppose if you got a bandsaw or even any basic machines, you could probably make one of these.
See if you can, and I'll try to hold you in there.
Now you can see
Is it going down?
Yeah.
Trough back there.
Yeah.
This one should probably angle over here like that a little bit.
Yeah, and they all, essentially if the injectors seep, it drains it to the back of the pump and then out.
Out that alley.
Got the trough in. The pliers are working for a handle for that tool, but also a screwdriver on its side, just about anything. Well, here comes number 4. And Dad was just saying maybe we should have done 4 first so that number 3 wouldn't be in the way, because number 4 is kind of blocked in the front by a piece of the casting. We're going to put this in next, and this is the shaft that your throttle controls that adjusts the fuel delivery. And there's a couple of L-shaped keys that are not in here. We'll put those in later. A lot of this pump, we're just putting it together. We got to go back into it once we get it on the machine and adjust it. Got a little grease on in there. This has been cleaned up.
I got it. There we go.
Then I'm going to put this on here. 16, I remember.
Yeah, so wherever it grabs, we want to go, my black mark right there. Okay, she starts right there. Okay, there's 1 turn, 16 right there, and a little less. Actually, it will lock right there Our little L pin will go there.
When we get the gauge out, then we'll check it and see how close we actually are.
That goes in there. There it is, right where it was.
Yeah.
When we took it apart.
Right on the money. You know what? I'm about 99% sure that this is going to be right.
Check it right to there. Right to that.
Yeah, and we're talking about this little override spring right there.
Yeah, see how right here it overrides when you push in. That's when your motor lugs, it gives it that much more from the governor. But to check it, you just touch that right there.
There are days I kind of wish I had a spring like that, where I could just use just a little bit more to get me through. So this goes right up in here first. And all this stuff's got to come out of here when we set these, once we get it on the machine. But we want to get it all together so we know where everything's at. And that bolts right into that. And that's going to turn these injector pistons that go into the fuel barrels, the pump barrels, when you move the throttle in and out here. We're going to do a preliminary check with this tool just to see if we have our adjustment correct. Dad's looking for the numbers in the book, and there's a sight gauge right here on this tool that goes down, and you can see it lines up with this gear here, so that when you set this in here, you can line it up with the graduations on that rack. Right there on the rack, that one's marked. There's kind of a notch and a little circle around the tooth where you need to insert that to line it up. Helps to have a little light so I can look through here and I can guide that gear right into there. The tool's got to be clamped down right here to hold it in place. There's a 0 degree and a 0 degree. You can note that that's moving back and forth. So we're going to go ahead and 0 it right about there. Look down that sight hole right there. That lines up with the gear and the notch on the rack and the marked gear on the bottom of this tool. Dad's looking at the rack setting chart, and what do we got?
D4 tractors. They list 4 D4s, but this is for 4 Gs, 7 Js, 2 Ts, and 5 Ts, depending on the cam. So it's only going to be either 480, 575, or 500.
All right.
So let's just bump it and see what we have. Right there, we're like at 5.510.
And that's right there bumping the spring for the...
I mean, we can check it again.
Yeah.
Where was 0? Right.
No, 0's...
Right there.
That's 0.
Okay. So we run up and bump it. Right there. I got the same thing.
Yeah.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and a little bit.
So we're...
Evidently, it's at that 10. It's bumped up a little bit from 500.
It's like at 510?
It's at 510.
Yeah.
Which means it would give it a little bit more fuel.
Yeah, which
is good.
Yeah, I'm not worried. We're not going to be working this that hard.
No.
This is the rack setting we had when we took it apart. Let me see. I'm curious to push this in and see what it gives us. That gives us another 10.
It does?
Yeah.
What's it go to, like 600?
So that's about where we were, right?
Yeah, right.
Right there.
Yeah, it goes to 600.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay. And we're going to check this again, obviously, once we get it on the tractor, for sure, to double check everything. But I think we're pretty good.
I think it's fine.
Up next, we're going to put this plug back in right here. And I have a new O-ring for this. It's actually a 2A3854. And from what I understand, this can be a very tight fit. So, to accommodate for that, I'm going to put a couple of bolts in here. And I've got a puller right here. I'm just going to push that back in with this puller, H puller. That might be a pickle to get in there. We're going to find out. I don't have the right wrench. This is always the right wrench. It does want to back out just a touch, but that, that governor will push that in. As easy as that pushed in, it'll be fine. I can push that with my thumb flush, so when the governor goes on here, it'll hold it in there fine. It'll be nice and tight. There's a ferrule that goes in here off of the fuel tower. It's going to use this same 2A3854, and I managed to get a new gasket for this at CAT. And I'll show you where that goes on the fuel tower. And the O-ring's going to go around that ferrule right there. We've already painted some of these parts because we got anxious and ahead of ourselves. And when we mix up paint, we like to have a whole bunch of stuff to paint. I guess whether we need to or not. So we'll have to tape off what's already yellow until we get to another yellow coat.
That's it there. And see, it went over that plug.
Okay.
Right there.
We got lucky. We got the gasket. It looks like a 3B3527, but I don't have a new one. Dad's going to make one of these.
I'll make one quick.
Hey, that looks pretty good.
Here.
These long ones go on this side over here. There's kind of a step. There's two long ones, and the rest are shorter.
Going?
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, it pulled it right in there. No problem.
There.
Yep, there you go.
Goes just like that. This goes through here like this.
And that's got tiny, tiny little needle bearings in it, so you want to put grease in there. Grandpa's favorite. And a double.
Everything well lubed in here.
Yep.
Lube this pin.
Making Grandpa proud. You never stand around, like in our family business, there's never nothing to do. But there's always something to grease.
Or gripe about.
Or complain about, yeah. We do that. And that's kind of that H-link. The pin goes in from the engine side towards the outside where the castle nut goes.
Like yay. Castle nuts go on now.
So that's the castle nuts that Dad just put in there. And we're trying to line up the cotter pins. You got to come up with your spring.
Up?
Up with the... There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I'm going to put this keeper in here. And this is exactly like the ones that hold the pins in for the brakes on the back of the tractor. And it's just a keeper that keeps that pin from walking out. Dad's already made a gasket for this. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Now the fun part. Oh, man, this isn't going to be too hard. Well, that wasn't very hard at all.
Yeah, the hard part's yet to come.
You want to do that?
Putting the cotter key in the back.
Yeah, you can do that.
No, you did. You decided to do this part of the job. You go ahead.
No, I just want to do the easy stuff. It's your turn. My free pocket pry bar from the tool truck at work. There we go. See? This thing's handy for free. This has been the best tool I ever bought for free. I think it only cost me like a $200 tire gauge or something. Yeah, this 7J, yeah, about right there. And that's where the 4G is that we have set. The other 7J up here on the bench, it's in a little further. I think they've got this one set a little incorrectly because right now it's got that spring slammed all the way in. It's got too much. But we do need to hook the governor up too, so I think we're going to be okay. We can fine-tune it when we get it together. Dad just made a cork for the side of the governor. And while he's cleaning things up over there, I'm going to put this on here. And I'm just going to silicone it to the plate so that we can get in and out of there and not have to worry about losing the gasket. when those fuel barrels go back on there, there's a O-ring that goes around each one of these ferrules. We'll do that later as well. I'm going to put my hour meter on here because we need to paint it, and I like to paint it after it's together. It'll kind of seal everything up. I've got the same gasket that we put on in here, and this is the 2A4708. And again, they are directional. They will only go one way. So we'll stick that guy on there just like so. And my rebuilt hour meter goes on top of that. And I'll have to turn this so that that fits in between those two bolts. That's all that moves this hour meter. Service meter. Sorry. A lot of years working with Cat equipment, and they were hour meters on that old newer equipment. This wouldn't be an antique Caterpillar without at least one nut that you have to tighten with an open end wrench. We're going to leave the fuel barrels out of here for now and tape off the top of this for paint, and we'll paint those individually. I did notice a date stamp on the back of this fuel pump. It's a 3337, so this fuel pump is a 1937 casting. Up next, we're going to put the side plate on so we can get some paint on it. I mean, there's no better place to put it for paint than on the machine. And this is the gasket. It's a 2A3867. So the bolt up here in the top, it's actually a long one because this is set back in here further where the threads are. The rest of them are shorter bolts. That's it for the fuel pump for today. There's a lot more to do once we get it on the machine. I do want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Today we're going to put together on camera there. Are you done moving stuff?
No.
That'll really mess you up when you pick up a pencil and try to erase something that's got lubriplate on it.
Yeah, that's why you wipe it across your belly to clean it off.
This is what you get when Neanderthals put together a Caterpillar D4.
Yeah.
We do like our fire. Fire's good. That does explain our fascination with the cutting torch.